I'm on the other side of the pond. I started consulting with PCI back in 2005 at a services consultancy in Kansas City, Fishnet, run by Gary Fish. I started into the PCI practice as it spun up, because obviously it was all very new then. We did our QDSPs with Visa, pre-council certifications for us. And then PCI and ISO and NIST have been my bread and butter for probably for the last pushing 18 years, I guess now. Probably is almost as long as Jeff and Coop. But I think we all started it around about the same time. The three of us worked together at Fishnet, and then it became Optiv. They all scarpered. And then Coop dragged me over to where he was at Newarks. We were there for a while. Took a little bit of a break. Went your route, Ben. I was at Equifax for a while until Gary Fish asked me if I wanted a role in his new venture. So I was there. Worked with David there after the acquisition with Herjavec Group. And then from there, Coop had been working on me for about a year, and over I came. So here I am now at TrustedSec, living the dream, loving life. It's just fun to be back out with clients again and hitting the PCI milestones.
Well, so they used to call Sir George Martin the fifth Beatle because of his influence in the studio, if you will, especially with some of the later compositions. And so I'm really pleased that Lee joined our team because he's been kind of in our fifth Beatle for a while now, and it's about time he started getting some recognition. So, and we've also increased our collective experience base by roughly another 20 years.
Yeah.
So this is exciting for me, for us, and for anyone who's followed the Dream Team for about the last 8 years. So welcome, Lee.
Okay.
Appreciate it, gentlemen.
Okay. I guess it just, so, one thing, you had a number of questions about is, PCI version 4, companies are slowly, acclimating to, the many, new requirements, dealing with things. I guess, Lee, I mean, we're all US based. What's from the other side of the ocean? I mean, are things that different in the UK and Europe, or they're struggling the same way they
I think
the US, or
I think to some degree it's the same, but I think we were probably a little bit further along on the things like EMV and stuff. So it was more of a pushed adoption rate on this side, but obviously COVID changed the landscape in the US as well, and the sale of chip and pin, and more importantly contactless, rocketed. So I think we're all pretty much seeing the same pain points, the same issues as we're kind of working through the new standard.
Is Brexit going to have any? I can't imagine, but will Brexit have any effect on your day-to-day or anything within the UK?
No. I mean, Brexit happened. Officially it happened 2019 now. So
they got to see Nigel Farage on TV more.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, deep joy.
So if anybody has questions, make sure you use the Q&A function so you can post your questions on there, and hopefully we can answer them. If I'm able to, sometimes I'll answer them on that Q&A function. I can type to you, and the other guys as well will do that sometimes. But I wanted to get us started with two requirements that I think are pretty damned important, and then I'm going to let Dave talk about them because he's sort of really into it. With PCI 4.0 and I'm getting to know the new requirement numbers. 6.4.3, which is where it's watching all of your scripts that are on your payment pages, and then 11.6.1, where it's sort of a tamper mechanism to make sure that your payment pages aren't getting changed. We need to talk about the fact that when we say payment pages, this doesn't just mean the fact that maybe you have a redirect or an iframe or whatever. That page that leads you to wherever it is you're going in the future is part of this. So you're going to have to start tracking all of those scripts, and you're going to have to worry about any tampering. So with that, David, take it away, sir.
You bet. So for those of you who've been following our wonderful team here for a while, know or have worked with me or know me, know that I've been evangelizing about getting something done in this space for quite some time. The client, well, traditionally, application security, secure application development, penetration testing, all that kind of stuff, that traditionally focuses on the server side. It doesn't really incorporate anything in terms of testing what's going on the client-side browser. And up until recently, it was very difficult to actually do any testing with client-side browser stuff because it was just tough to get visibility into what's actually taking place. And so what's happened over time is the client side, which I like to refer to as the Mariana Trench attack surfaces, because, you know, if anybody's familiar with the Mariana Trench, it's about 30,000 feet under the Pacific Ocean, and we didn't get any visibility into the Mariana Trench till around 1960, I think. And of course, what we saw when we did get visibility there really surprised a lot of people. So the requirements that Coop are referring to, I've been screaming about for a long time. I even tried to start a special interest group around this stuff, made it to a short list, but then didn't get selected. But I'm very excited and very pleased to see that the Mariana Trench of attack surfaces, which up until now has been basically the domain of malware creators, unscrupulous marketers gathering business intelligence and that kind of thing. So essentially what happens is when an application development team creates an application architecture, they do all their secure coding review, and they do their pen testing and do application vulnerability assessment. Once again, they don't look at the client-side browser. And so that has been sort of the purview of people who are trying to gather user telemetry, business intelligence, but also to, you know, so it's just hard to see what's going on in there. They try to inject various third, fourth, and fifth party scripts into there. And so that's why it's important that if you are doing e-commerce at all, and you have payment redirection pages, or if you have any login, admin login screens where someone will be entering their authentication credentials, you really have to have a handle on what's going on. So 6.4.3 says all payment page scripts that are loaded and executed in the consumer's browser are managed as follows. A method is implemented to confirm that each script is authorized. A method is implemented to ensure the integrity of each script, and inventory of all scripts is maintained with written justification as why each is necessary. So the interesting thing is that this particular requirement in 11.6.1, and along with a lot of the other requirements of 4.0, don't necessarily kick in until 2025. But what we've been telling people is don't wait around to the last minute to start looking at this stuff. And does exist some tools out there. There's some technology companies that are providing software as a service tools and things like that to get visibility into those scripts. And then you can actually see what they do, what they execute. Some of the tools I've seen actually will flag, you know, OWASP vulnerabilities that are inspired by this scripts and that kind of thing. So it's really important to start thinking about as far as your secure development, software development lifecycle stuff, as well as your testing capabilities, your QA for this stuff. You should really start working on that now and start looking into not only the methodologies associated with trying to do that kind of testing, but also look into some of the technologies that companies that are out there that can help you with that. And one of them is one of my favorites is called Feroot, Feroot. They are pretty much the cutting edge and the first to get into this game. And they continue to amp up their technology and their capabilities. The other one is 11.6.1. And it says a change and tamper detection mechanism is deployed as follows: to alert personnel to unauthorized modification, including indicators of compromise, changes, additions, and deletions to the HTTP headers and the contents of payment pages as received by the consumer browser. So once again, this is the Mariana tranche of attack surfaces. This is in the client-side browser. We can no longer ignore this, and I'm really excited to see that we're finally going to. A lot of the more notable breaches that occur around, exploiting iframes and Ajax fields and third-party scripts and that kind of thing, injected JavaScript. There really, up until now, has not been much focus on this or ability to do anything about it. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think, just one thing to underscore, which you said sort of in passing, is, don't wait till the last minute. I mean, sometimes companies see, 2024 as being, 2025 being a long time away. But I mean, getting just getting a new, laser toner, it could take you 2 months in some organizations to order. And when you've got, deep infrastructure changes around payment gateways, around infrastructure, those don't occur in a vacuum, and they take quite a while. So even though some of the implementation dates might seemingly be in the future, in real time, they're days away.
Yeah, and I'd like to give equal time. One of the things we didn't say at the beginning, but it's true. These are our opinions. Ben, Dave, Jeff, Lee, and myself. We all work for. Well, Lee and I are TrustedSec, but I mean, it's our opinions. But I would like to mention all the tools. Faroot was the first, I think, that was out messing with this stuff. But right now, there were some really, really good ones out there as well. Not endorsing them, just listing them to give folks options. There's Source Defense, there's Human Security, and there's J Scrambler on top of Faroot. Those are the ones that I know of. Doesn't mean that's the only ones that are out there, but all of those will help you with 643 and 1161. And we were asked a question, are there options for these requirements other than another tool that you have to buy? Yeah, the option is that you do a bare bone payment page and you turn off Google Analytics and everything else so that you don't have to worry about other scripts that are out there. But who the hell can do that on e-com these days? Nobody. The business will crucify you.
Like you said, you could do that for for a very small business. You can strip it down, use CSP or SRI to control the destination. But anything, as soon as you step foot into a dynamic environment, PayPal or look at Shopify and some of these with the gamification as well of the payment process at the back end. I mean, things are just popping up, aren't they, left, right, and center, to entice you before you've actually hit that checkout, and all of this has to be accounted for.
Yeah, that's the real rub. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, and Coop, as you were probably going to point out, that is the rub. I mean, it's damn near impossible nowadays to get rid of this crap. I mean, if you're on Shopify, if you're on WordPress, if you're on any of these platforms, it just automatically comes with the territory. And, the other bad part of these requirements are, how do you inventory this junk? I mean, we had a client a couple of months back say, I want to know what's out there. Well, we tried and tried and tried, and there really isn't a good way to get even a clean inventory of what's running in a lot of cases. So, this is version 4's seam sales reference, because we all remember, and when was that, Lee? 3? When seam, remember they mandated that logging had to.
Oh, yeah, well, it had to be centrally aggregated.
Yeah,
Yep.
and
And-
my God, seam sales went through the roof.
Yeah.
This is going to be the same thing.
It was Archetype's blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I was just answering somebody here, somebody was asking this. I've been getting this question a lot about these two requirements. And again, that's why we're putting so much effort into talking about these, because as you can see, this is going to be a big thing. Folks are wanting to know, hey, I got a service provider out here with a payment page, and they're supposed to do all that. No, the bottom line is you had better figure out who was doing what. Goes right back to what's been around for a long time, the 12.8.2 stuff that moves forward with PCI 4. You and your service provider have to have responsibilities divided. Somebody has to be responsible to be monitoring those scripts, to be ASV scanning those pay pages and the lead page to the pay page, and somebody has to be responsible for the tamper mechanism. Don't just say, hey, my service provider gave me a SAC. Make sure that SAC states on it in the AOC that accompanies it that they are indeed doing that. Because if it does not, and you're not sure if they're doing it, then you're on the hook. So you get breached, and it's not going to matter. There's no requirement for a service provider to do a damn thing. I've always loved when people say, well, my service provider must. And it's like, no, your service provider does whatever the hell he wants and then charges you. You have to negotiate what that service provider is doing. And this is why, and in talking to some of these tool manufacturers that are, taking this on for you, they're trying to make deals with the big guys. Which is genius. They're trying to make deals with FIS, with Fiserv, with CyberSource, any of these, Braintree, PayPal, any of these, e-commerce cloud, Salesforce. And why is that? Because they want to put those tools right where they need to be on those pay pages. So that's good. If that service provider, let's say I'm Joe's transaction processing, and I've brought in all of these tools, and I've said, here you go, customer, pick the one you want to use. You want Farouk? Great. You want Source Defense? Great. You want JScrambler? Great. You want Human? Great. Pick it. But the point is, I'm selling it to you, so I'm doing it, right? But in other situations, if it's not being sold to you, represented to you as in use at your payment processor, you're going to have to buy the tool, license it, or you're going to have to maybe go find another payment processor. That's
well, and let's be clear here, Coop. While the PCI DSS says nothing about the fact that you must use a service provider that is PCI compliant, where that ruling comes from is the card brands. Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, etc., all require their customers to only use service providers that are PCI compliant. So while there's nothing in the DSS that says thou shalt, it's the rules inside the security programs of the individual brands that are catching you. And that's why people have to be cognizant of the operating rules of the brands in addition to the DSS, because it doesn't stop with the DSS.
Yeah. That's not a trivial point. I mean, there's a lot of companies mistakenly think it's just PCI and that's it, and they forget about Visa, Amex, MasterCard, and they could have quite a rude awakening.
Yeah, and especially if they get breached.
Yeah.
Because once they get breached, I can tell you Visa's going to probably call Kroll or some other PFI. They're going to come in, they're going to crawl up your butt with a electron microscope, going to write the PFI report, and they may put you on what I call double secret probation, which is the designated entities supplemental validation, or DESV, which is basically just, okay, you're doing a rock. Now let's make you do these requirements like 70 times because we don't think you did it right the first time. Oh, and by the way, I need you to do those another 5 times. So you don't want DESV. Trust me, you do not want to do a DESV rock.
Just
Well,
Coop mentioned PFI. A lot of people don't know what that is. It's a PCI, forensic investigator. There's not a lot of them out there, and they charge a lot of money. And the thing about it also is you don't, there's not a lot of value in that. They're going to just tell you what the problem is and how it happened, but you're not better off from that. So, doing security right, doing PCI compliance right in the first place, you're gonna have a lot to show for that. But by the time a PFI comes, and you need them, it's just get your checkbook out, and you may want to work on your resume also.
Well, not only that, I mean, essentially, the PFI essentially will create documentation around what they found, what was wrong, what caused the actual, events to occur. And then they're going to hand that information over to Visa and MasterCard, Discover, Amex, and they're going to look at that and essentially determine what level of due diligence did you exercise, not only when you signed up the service provider, but keeping them honest.
Right.
And so then you're going to get charged for the PFI. Then if the fines and penalties and liabilities are inversely proportional to the amount of due diligence you have exercised. So if it wasn't a whole lot, guess what? You're going to pay even more.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, once the stuff's cleaned up, then you have to go out and find another QSA firm different than the one that did the original assessment, and have them come in and redo that assessment so that you can get a clean bill of health. And then at that point, the service providers can make you a designated entity, if you will, which means they pretty much every single requirement that applies in the DSS, and also in their ever increasingly strict rules and requirements for doing business with Visa, MasterCard, Amex, JCP, and Discover. You're going to get charged for that as well. So I mean, this is something that most people don't really think about it. And as a matter of fact, the title of this webinar is what's coming in 2024 for PCI DSS. Well, always keep in mind that the card brands are always looking to raise the bar and further reduce risk and further enhance the reliability and security of their payment transactions. So it's not just PCI you have to worry about, the PCI DSS. Especially if you're a merchant, you've signed contracts with card brands. If you're a service provider, you have other liabilities. So this can get complicated pretty quick.
Yeah. And there's my point is, there's people who've been charged with crimes after they're found not guilty, but many people had to mortgage their homes to pay for an attorney. And that's what PFI is about, is you're just getting back to square one, but you're in the bank for a lot of money.
Well, look what happened to the Uber CEO.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He went to prison. I think he's still there.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience, Kevin Mitnick, God rest his soul, who's no longer with us, was a friend of mine. And Kevin, I hired him. At one point, I was doing some consulting work for UBS, the Swiss investment bank, and we hired him to find out where we had this situation that just kept popping up. Every time we'd clean one of the Sun boxes or one of the Linux boxes, it would come back. It was sort of a like mess with you virus. I guess I would call it more of a nuisance. And it turned out that the guy who did it was at Payne Weber in New Jersey, probably close to you, Ben, over in Jersey. And he was pissed. Yeah, and he got pissed because when UBS bought Payne Weber, this is public knowledge, folks. No secrets here. You can Google it. When UBS
Mitnick didn't tell you that in jail?
Yeah, no, Kevin. When we went to court, the problem was that, well, how Kevin got him is he went in there and he, nobody could do social engineering like Kevin. And, he just cozied up to this guy. And within days, he knew that this was the guy. He was pissed because he wasn't getting his bonuses. UBS did something when they bought Payne Weber. He didn't get his money, so off he goes. Yeah, I believe he did quite a bit of jail time. And there was a lot of data that was exfiltrated, breach, what have you. I don't remember the nits and noids. I just was involved in the actual trying to figure it out stage. But boy, it was ugly. And a lot of people, I know what you're saying. I had heard a bunch of people had mortgaged houses because they had to get attorneys to cover that stuff. But that, that could be hearsay. But I don't know. I've never dealt with a merchant that's been breached that's been happy when it's over.
This is I think you Coop and Jeff, you answered this, but Jefferson Hopkins asked, and this is not an infrequent thing. What do I do if a major mobile payment provider will not provide a service provider AOC? You said find a new one, but is there, I mean, there's no legitimate reason why a service provider won't provide an AOC.
It's Apple. They've never provided. I believe he's talking about Apple because he
Okay.
said nobody but Apple. And if you're on Apple, and my knowledge, anybody on here can say I'm wrong, but in my knowledge, they've never provided any type of an AOC, even to Walmart and some other large organizations where I have friends that have been there. Apple, feels like we publish our security. Here it is.
Well, so here's the rumor that I was told.
Cool. I love rumors.
I was told that Apple got a pass from Visa and MasterCard. I don't know if that's true or not, but the rumor is that's why they feel enabled to tell you to go pound sand.
Yeah, I heard a rumor. If you remember back when they opened up the Apple store and stuck a bunch of 10-year-olds behind a desk and called it the Genius Bar, when they did that, when I went in there a couple of times back when I was using iPhones, they had the pay devices that they were putting people's credit cards into. Now I'm talking, this is years ago. This is before we had the sleds and all the Verifone or the Ingenico or the PAX or any of the purpose-built devices. The ID Tech stuff wasn't out there. And here's Apple taking credit cards in the Apple store. And I was working for the PCI Council at the time, and I was asking everybody who was anybody, can somebody tell me what the deal is? The rumor I heard was that Apple's bank, who was on the back end of those transactions, was getting so much money from acquiring those transactions that, quite frankly, they didn't care. So it was like, Coop, go eat Cracker Jacks, go bye-bye. And that was the rumor. And I mean, who knows? There could be. I mean, when you get big, I mean, let's face it. After all, it's all about commerce, right? Every one of these merchants that we've all worked with, so many of them. I've worked, and I still work with some of these the names that are the big. People are in their restaurants, their stores, whatever, every day. These are big organizations. We're just little guys. We go in, we do our thing, but when it all comes down to it, it's always about the Benjamins.
It's no different than Square. Right. I mean, Square operates the way they operate because their largest investor is a brand.
That's right.
That's right.
That is true. We've got one question that's open that I'm afraid to tackle. This looks like Lee should take on.
This goes to that crazy discussion that Lauren had a couple of community meetings ago, where she claimed one-way traffic did not make a device connected to, and a bunch of us in the room moaned.
Was that the 3-hop one?
No.
This was a different one. Oh, it wasn't
maybe
the
one or two meetings ago.
Oh, okay, because the 3-hop one in Florida was pretty good.
In response to a question about one-way connectivity, i.e. the firewall rule says it can only go out, and a bunch of us said, wait a minute, it's a TCP connection. Yes, it can connect out, but traffic flows both ways.
It just goes out, falls off the edge of the world.
Well, UDP does.
With all these, UDP is definitely the protocol of flat earthers. So,
but why would that
I mean,
have
TCP,
any significance?
flows both ways. So, I mean, I understand the question, and the question is about cloud services that are on these one-way data flows. And does that make it a connected to device? And in my humble opinion, yes, it is. It is connected. Care
No, I
anyone else
agree.
care?
No, I
weigh in?
agree. No, because you're 100% right. There's, I mean, TCP has to do a handshake, even to get the sequence and it has to go back and
It's in
forth.
the
The SYNAC has to go. You have to have a SYNAC SYN, and then right, and then I mean, God, I used to teach this 1,000 years ago, and I used to put the TCP packets up and show the SYN and the ACK and then the net, and all of that stuff, the TTL, the time to live, and all this cool stuff. And that's a handshake, guys. So, like Lee said, it doesn't just go off the edge of the earth.
If you've got an outbound connection and an outbound rule, no dedicated inbound rule to that device, I think the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? I mean, it's not called a TCP established connection for nothing. So it is connected to.
That's right.
What risk level there is it's different, but this is more a matter of scope.
Yeah.
Scope's more black and white. The device reaching out just to grab something or post something, and that's it. And then the connection drops again. From in the CDE to outside, far less of a risk than that connection that can come outside coming in, and can probably influence the device or certainly give the option to.
Well, and what I always go back to, Lee, is like, for example, with Splunk. Yes, the log data is going out from the Splunk agent, but the Splunk agent is in communication with the Splunk server. They talk back and forth constantly. If there's a flaw in that agent, it may be possible that the Splunk log server could be used as a compromise against the agent. We don't know that. It's called a 0-day for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead. I think SIMs are always an interesting one anyway, because once again, I mean, this is a matter of scope coming from being connected to, but your SIM's going to be in scope to some degree anyway, because it's got your logs. It's unless people are in a large enough organization where there's a separate data lake and the Splunk is reading from that. More often than not, you find these SIMs are taking care of the security of the logs as well, and auditing the actual log files and the likes.
I think it's in scope. I think the SIEM is in scope, and the cloud part of it is in scope. It's just the degree to the it's just like
what controls are going to apply,
right? What controls? Exactly. The thing that always upsets me with people, and I get it. When P2PE first came out, how wonderful was that? We had 3 solutions, one in Italy that nobody could use. But the bottom line was we had a standard where all of a sudden merchants could buy this, put it in, and boom, scope reduction, automatic. First time I ever heard that. We fought over scope. Think about it as QSAs. I say we, us, especially us old farts. I came out of the first QSA classes, and we fought over scope. That was the holy grail. I used to call it that. The holy grail of PCI. Is it in scope? Is it not in scope? I finally convinced my clients, look, it's a Windows box. Bloody hell am I going to let you just let it sit there? Okay. So, I want endpoint protection and patching and what have you. Now, as to the rest of it, we can talk about what it's actually doing. Maybe it's pulling up a virtual page, whatever. So just because something's in scope doesn't mean that all 9 million requirements apply to it. And that's where people have got to get that out of their head. Yes, it's in scope, but here's what has to be looked at for that scope. And that's where your QSA should be working with you to validate that scope. That's the whole idea of how scope was established. When I was the trainer at the council, the merchant determines the scope, the QSA validates it. Well, that requires a relationship. QSAs need to go in and be patient and work with the merchant to validate it. But just because it's in scope, it's not the end of the world. It just means that there are some things that have to be done. We had a note from somebody that said Apple Pay. I asked him if he's an Apple guy. I'm not going to say his name, but he said Apple Pay will provide an AOC. And I was like, really cool. If that's true, let me know, because I don't know. Have you guys ever seen an Apple Pay AOC? I've been wanting to see one forever.
No,
Never
I've never seen one.
I've asked
I've even
100
asked
clients
for one.
Yeah, I've begged, and these are big clients where they were on the back. Okay, so these are big clients that we're using like e-commerce cloud with on the back end, like with Salesforce or any of these so-called e-commerce cloud, Shopify, the rest of them. All of the transaction processors are on the back end. And so a lot of times, I don't get too crazy about asking for it, but I've asked many of my bigger clients and they've never been able to get Apple to cough one up. I mean, Google, Microsoft, AWS, you can go out online and they share that stuff. You can give them like your email and a little brief about I need it or whatever. Some of them are willingly sharing them where you just click on it. I've never had that luck with Apple. So if this is true, very refreshing news, and I'll stop chuckling about Apple's AOC.
I mean, you said earlier, Coop, that Apple got a pass. Who is it? Someone asked, could my client go to their acquirer for a pass? Jeff said, sure, it's worth the ask. With that, I think there's almost a 0% chance anyone could really get a pass. I mean, Apple is just such a unique, massive organization, but it's sort of like asking a judge, hey, could I start speeding every day of the week and not get tickets? And the short answer is no, but thanks for asking.
You got to go to their spaceship out there.
Yeah.
That they work in the spaceship, you have to go to the spaceship and wear a tinfoil suit or something, probably.
Heaven's Gate. I want to address one quickie about talking about changes that are coming in 4 that are going to bite people. The other big bite that's going to catch merchants are all those merchants that are doing SAQAs or rocks under SAQA format. You're going to have to start doing ASV scanning, and according to the council, depending on when you get started, you're going to have 4 scans, 4 quarterly scans, and that's going to be, I think, a heart attack for a lot of these people that haven't had to do that before.
Yeah, it does open up an interesting dichotomy, doesn't it? With the applicability notes for 11.3.2 have always had the about if it's your initial compliance session, you don't need four scans. But this is a bit of a weird and wacky one in the fact that we've got the scanning requirement being introduced to people who have very likely have been compliant or working on compliance for some time, and now all of a sudden, essentially, they needed to start March of this year scanning.
Yeah,
it sort of it becomes effect March 24, but really you have to start working on it 4 quarters in advance.
Yeah. That's right. I started telling my clients almost a year ago when we first kind of figured it out, like let's get rolling.
Is the council, I mean, are they making that clear to organizations?
I don't know that it's made clear. I was at the community meeting in Portland. I wandered around and listened to a lot of people, and I heard that being answered 500 different ways. So it goes back to my old adage: put 10 QSAs in a room, ask a question, get 10 different answers. Yeah, exactly. I think, again, so let's go back to something that's still true. If you are a merchant, then the Lord God Almighty is your acquirer. And so any of these kind of what I call tough questions, if you're dealing with WorldPay or Fifth Third or whatever they're, I think, whatever they're, whatever they are, and FIS, Fiserv, the big guys, TSYS, Global, whoever your acquirers, or you're dealing with Billy Joe's acquiring bank, that acquirer who acquires your transactions is God. And so, because that's who you're going to send your rock to. So that's the person, or that's the organization as a merchant that you can get those answers from. Now, if you're a service provider, it doesn't work quite like that, but the card brands can certainly come down on you. And like Jeff mentioned earlier, I don't know if you guys have gone out and looked at MasterCard's breakdown for SAC-D stuff for service providers and rock stuff. I recommend you do, everybody on this call, because there's a lot of stuff out there. I think it's good stuff. I think MasterCard breaks it out and into a lot of different little areas where they tell you, okay, if you're a service provider doing this, this, and this, then this is what you have to do to validate your compliance, and so on and so forth. Visa has very similar things out there. Discover, JCB, UnionPay, Amex, a little different. Amex has a QSA company doing their compliance program, have for years. And I don't know what the company name is now, whether it's Viking, Sysnet, Trust, Wave, Secure Trust, conglomerated pile of stuff.
Acme.
Yeah, Acme. And the Amex has had Acme doing their stuff for years, and all of your merchants have gotten those nasty notes from the Acme website saying, you cannot use Amex unless you fill out our portal. But again, you have to get permission as a merchant from those entities. The acquirers are the ones that really give you all that permission, but the service providers have to deal with what the brands want. It's always been that way. The brands, when I say they don't care about merchants, it's not that they don't care, but they're going to take up anything with the acquirers that they want to get moving downhill. They're not going to go, very rarely is the brand going to come to a merchant. Yep. Very rare, but they may go to the merchant's acquirer. If that merchant is breached, you can bet your bippy that the brand is going to be talking to whoever the merchant's acquirer is.
It's the acquirer that gets the fines levied.
That's right. The acquirer gets the fines levied, and then they turn around and, based on the agreement they have with the merchant, then the merchant gets whatever they get. So it kind of rolls down the hill. And so, a lot of merchants, they jump around, go from acquirer to acquirer, most likely to get a better interchange rate, which I get that. But then a lot of times they'll do it because they don't like the agreement that's in place should they be breached. And merchants are well within their right. It's America, or it's the world of payments. Doesn't have to even be in America, anywhere. It's payments. So it's sort of a no man's land, right? Where you can just do what you want. And in some cases, as far as picking an acquirer, well, that's great, but the merchant's going to sign an agreement with that acquirer. Some of those acquirers will turn that full fine right down to the merchant and then charge the merchant a fine on top of that. I've seen it.
Yep.
So the merchant ends up paying the fine that Visa's getting and the fine that the acquirer is getting in the middle.
It's like a rental car receipt. You find all these fees.
That's right.
Every fee of you.
And who reads that, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to sign one tomorrow night when I travel to Maine. So you sign that thing, and there's 18 lines of, sign here. I love how they point right here, right here, right here. They put their hand over it.
You read the operating regulations of the card brands that you accept, of the acquirers that you exchange cardholder data with, and even to the even if someone's issuing cards for me, what are their op regs?
Here's a comment. I think it's quite significant. A lot of people do misunderstand this. D. Perry wrote, would it be a compliant SAC AOC if we enter one of the requirements is not in place? And Jeff succinctly said nope, meaning one item not in place is the same as 300 items not in place. And a lot,
PCI
I've seen it more than once. I think, not in place is sort of, you're getting a pass. But there is no pass there.
DSS is a bare minimum benchmark.
Yeah.
It's where the validation standard begins.
It's a floor, not a ceiling.
It's in place with compensating control, not applicable.
Yeah.
We all have our own take on not tested, but
Right.
we beat that to death over the years.
I think, since they see it as an option, they'll mistakenly read it as it's an acceptable option. But it just, it's, not in,
if you think
not in compliant. Yeah.
If you think many consulting companies that do QSA work, they will work with their client through that assessment window. If there's a non-conformity pops up that's not show-stopping, it's not huge, it's not affecting historical evidence of being able to show that something was in place, they'll work with them to get it compliant, make sure, be happy with the situation as it is, look at some historical data to make sure that it's aligning. It gets ultimately, though, it is, as much as they call it an assessment, it's becoming more and more, and it looks like it is, it's an audit, whatever way you look at it. It's not a financial audit, but it is an audit against an industry standard. It's a point in time. And you can, if you're contracted as an auditor, then you check that not in place, here's your report. We're done. The job's done. So it's that you want to play that checkbox audit type mentality when you go out there and work the field, or do you want to be a trusted partner and work with them and get repeat business and so we have that fine line to walk as well, making sure that if it's not in place, it's not in place, because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to bring up, just in reference to version 4, if you're a merchant and you've followed us over the years, version 4 should be nothing. You've got end-to-end encryption, point-to-point encryption, you got tokenization, should be a walk in the park. Where my heart goes out is the service providers that come into contact with the data. I'm sorry, folks, I would love to help you out, but bend over, you'll enjoy it, because that's all you can do. If you come in contact with cardholder or sensitive authentication data and there's no way to get rid of it, don't kill your QSA. We're just the messenger.
That's right.
We can't help you here. You just gotta deal with it.
I think, and segue to another point is, a lot of companies should really be thinking of, how do we stop storing cardholder data? Because by and large, for most organizations, there's no compelling reasons to store cardholder data. So you tokenize things, you find other methods to do that. But if they do that, and obviously it's a longer term solution, but for most organizations, they should start that discussion.
Absolutely.
It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen next year. But if you've got a long-term plan to remove all cardholder data, PCI will be, for the most part, smooth sailing.
Which brings up a good question, Ben, that's out here. If requirement 151 is fully in place, can agent desktops with PCI data on their machines still somehow access email and intranet without breaking segmentation?
Yeah. Let everyone know what 151 is, Jeff, real quick.
Huh?
For people, what's 151? Let listeners know.
I can't read it, Ben, because I'm not on my fancy multi-screen terminal. I'm sitting in my kitchen.
Are we doing existing 151 or?
Yeah, are we talking about version 4?
version 4. So the security controls being implemented on
I'm guessing that's what he's bringing up.
Yeah.
And this is a problem with all contact customer service agents.
Yep.
Really, in order to work with this properly, you really should be using an encrypted keypad, not the PC's keyboard. Because the minute they start using a PC keyboard, that PC's in scope, and there's nothing we can do about it. One option I've used for some of my clients is give them a virtual desktop on Citrix, VMware, whatever, VDI, and let them interact with their email and all that stuff through that. Because that'll give you a way to break it up, as well as make sure whenever they bring it up, it brings it up as a golden image. But really, at the end of the day, you should be using a MagTech, an ID Tech, or somebody's keypad that's encrypted in order to get your contact agents out of scope.
Yeah, this is that's an old chestnut with PCI, and contact centers suck. Anytime I've had clients where they do contact centers, call centers, support centers, it's a nightmare. It's like I've told almost every merchant who's ever said to me, "We have a call center where we help customers with their orders." I go, "Yeah, and help yourself to a breach." I always tell them, "Why don't you go find a service provider that does this and just outsource the whole damn thing, and then let the service provider who takes the calls deal with the PCI compliance. Let them deal with it. It's their damn headache. Yeah, let them deal with it, and they can come in on your e-com page, outsource it." And my smart clients have listened to me. My maybe not so smart, and I shouldn't say that because they know who they are. I don't want to say they're not so smart. I think that they just can't see the benefit and completely outsourcing call center crap. Because it's the most difficult thing to make PCI compliant. And really, to be honest with you, this is my personal opinion. There are only two types, and I'm going to use the word type, of service providers going forward PCI 4 that should be dealing with any card data, and that is a support / contact / call center. Okay, they're going to deal with it because people call in, and that's how it is. The other service provider is somebody who issues payment cards. Obviously, they have to deal with it. So those are the two, in my opinion. So if it happens to be a bank that also has issuing and so on and so forth, that issuing people and contact center people. The rest of you, what are you doing? If you want to be a payment gateway, that's fine. Bring the card data in over TLS and then tokenize it. Get to, use a solution or write a solution. Get it out of scope. Get it out of scope. And now somebody else also made a point I think we need to bring up, talking about the 4 consecutive passing ASV scans. Okay. And I did hear this in Portland, but not from everybody. That new INFI sheet, if you read the FAQs for that new INFI that we as QSAs have to fill out with every 4 rock, there is an FAQ in there about the fact that the scans that have been run to date are passing, and there's a good vulnerability management program in place so they could get away with missing a scan. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't be attempting to do those scans. That's the other point I want to make.
Well, and on the assessor call, not the last one, the one before it, I can't remember if it was Lauren or who said it, but they were very clear that QSAs were expected to get 4 quarterly scans regardless of when the merchant or the service provider was filing their assessment.
There is an FAQ on it. There is an FAQ on it. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, but the FAQ doesn't really talk to it. It says you need
the INFI one does.
It uses
you need to read the
first
INFI.
filing
Read the
nonsense.
Read the INFI FAQ. Read the INFI FAQ about it. It's the INFI FAQ. and that INFI FAQ talks about it.
Well, then why doesn't the FAQ on the website match it?
Because they put this crap on the INFI FAQ. I don't know. I don't run the council. But the point is that that's why in Portland I heard people on each side, and it was in some cases folks that work for the council, folks that were with the card brands, service provider folks, other folks. That doesn't mean there's a right or wrong yet. All I'm saying is that right now there is on the INFI FAQ sheet, there is a thing there about the ASV scans.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just don't shoot
I
the
know.
messenger.
There's
But-
another good question out here about targeted risk assessments that we ought to chat about before we
Yes, if we got
sign
5
off.
minutes.
And
Yes.
that is overarching methodology. The methodology for the targeted risk assessment is in the form. That is your methodology. So go back, look at the targeted risk assessment, and use that as your methodology, because that is your guidance. You answer those questions, you're done.
Yeah, and there's 2 types of TRAs. There's one for the frequency requirements. Anywhere in PCI where it used to say periodically, which wasn't defined, now you have to define that. For instance, how many or how often the POI devices are checked in the stores or in the merchant points, things like that. Anytime there's any type of a frequency of doing something, there will have to be a TRA that's filled out to show why you chose daily, weekly, hourly, monthly, yearly, whatever, and justify it. The other TRA is the one for the whole requirement. If you've got one that you're going to do a customized approach on, then you're going to have to do a TRA for that. And so those are the 2 types of TRAs that are out there. I think the one that's going to be the most common will be the frequency, the requirements that have that periodically in them.
Yeah, all low risk, or I should say low categorized vulnerabilities will now be patched after 24 months.
Right. Yeah. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, usually that was kind of each organization sort of did their thing, but now, there has to be some documentation. I actually am glad that they added the TRA for these, because when I used to teach the QSAs and ISAs, they would ask me, well, what type of period is periodically? And I said, I don't know, monthly's periodic, daily's periodic. And they would say, well, what is it? And I said, well, pick. And people would get so angry. So now they get to pick, but they have to prove what they picked is the right thing.
I mean, the key is to defend, have a reasonable defense, how that, why they did that. Meaning, for example, Costco gas stations, I think twice a day, they inspect for skimmers. If you're in a dentist's office, small office, if you're scanning for skimmers, once a week, that's acceptable because, different environment, different clientele, different risks. So Costco's doing it twice a day. That's periodic. The dentist's office is doing it, once every 2 weeks. That's periodic, and they're both in good shape. If Costco would do it once every 2 weeks and the dentist would do it twice a day, that would definitely be periodic, but, non-compliant. So the key is, just if you could defend it to the council, defend it to a lawyer, then you're in good shape there. So yeah, with that, it looks like we're coming up on the hour. But once again, if anyone has any questions, I think we answered a lot of them here. You could email PCIDreamTeam@gmail.com. It will go to us, and we'll do our best to answer that. Once again, Lee, welcome to the Dream Team.
Appreciate it, gentlemen.
For good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Our Marmite man. So we'll we do these webinars periodically.
Indeed. Unspecified.
Yeah. So I said Jeff has his PCI Guru blog, so you could, if you don't, you should subscribe to that, and he'll keep you abreast on when our next webinar is. But once again, thanks, TrustedSec, for hosting this. Thanks to my compadres for joining us, and thank all of you for your excellent questions. They're all that's what we're here for, to help you out. So once again, thank everyone, and we'll speak again periodically.